Hello, everybody, and welcome to the American Scouser post-match. And this week, we have a special guest with us, our correspondent of everything, and not to mention, including fashion and cable TV. I can't remember what else you were the correspondent of, but our humor guy, as well as actually the supporter club in New Orleans, the president, Rich Kramer, is with us. Rich, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning. Just trying to stay awake to get through this.
A win like this against Sean Douche's Burnley makes waking up early in the morning worthwhile. While we complain about working out, probably people on the West Coast are cussing us out because they probably think we don't even know what waking up early means. And we're also going to actually go to your supporter club. We have Gally, who's our regular on our podcast over there. So he's going to talk to a couple of your boys in your absence since you're chilling at home, looks like.
Yeah, I'm a little ways away from our local pub, so 6:30 didn't work for me this morning, but hopefully a couple other guys that live a little closer made it in.
Yeah, we're gonna bring those guys on pretty soon over here, and then kind of like get their take on the game and kind of show off your supporter club bar and everything like that. But let's talk about the game first while we kind of like hook up with those guys. Probably not the lineup everybody expected. What did you think when you saw the lineup? I think like defense wise we were set, but the midfield, I don't know if anybody else saw. He kind of gave some hints in the press conference before the game, but I don't think anybody saw Keita and Elliott together, or did you?
No, I was expecting Tiago in there, and also was expecting Bobby after last week and being back with the fans. But as he does, Jota earned his spot.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you play against Burnley, you know it's going to be physical. I mean, I could not believe they started freaking wasting time. I think it was like the fourth minute or fifth minute or something like that. And this is exactly why I hate Sean Dyche and Sean Douche. It's just ugly, ugly football is what Burnley plays. And it can be effective sometimes, I guess, but it is just ugly to watch
Yeah.
and interact with. So,
Well, it was really important. I think we got that goal fairly early because we know what Burnley does. They sit further back than Sadio Mane's hairline, but making them come out and play opened up the game a bit, and I think we dominated for the most part.
So let's talk about that goal. I mean, it's like Kostas, the Greek scouser, as he calls himself. I mean, it's the great delivery by him. Jota, I think he's probably our almost like only guy that's dangerous with like a header in the box. Nails it in. And you're right. I think getting that goal, I was dreading the second half if this first half ended 0-0 because having seen them waste time in the first freaking 5 minutes, it could only get worse from there. But
Yeah.
what do you make of Kostas' play, by the way?
Man, he's got to be the best left back in the league. He looks great in his 2 games this season so far, and it'll be a great relief to be able to not have our machine Robbo run into the ground. It's quite lucky to have two of the best left backs in the league in the same team. He looked great, and I think his fight and his attitude is definitely endearing too. So he's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, especially at the end there when he was like wrestling around with like two or three guys and came out with the ball. It was kind of like Robo's his moment against City where he ran like freaking like 10 minutes straight and
Right.
doing the pressure. And that's the kind of stuff, the fans appreciate in the stadium and we do as well. I mean, he was going full speed and I thought he looked a lot better from compared to last week defensively as well. One main concern I had, especially in the first half, and kind of carried on to the beginning of the second half, was probably letting Burnley send in those crosses way too many times, and that's all they want to do.
Yeah, they're pretty predictable, and we let it happen a few times. But our towers at the back and our Brazilian Mignolet kept them out.
And that's one thing, but even in the last second, I mean, he got that save to make sure we did get the clean sheets at the end again. So that's 2 games in a row. And I know, gameplay wise, I mean, it was definitely freaking convincing, especially the second half, how much possession we had and what we were able to do with it. So, I mean, compared to last year's games, what is the biggest difference that you see for these, like, obviously it's a small sampling, but in terms of like having one home game against freaking Burnley again, teams that sit back and wait, what is like the biggest differences that you see between the gameplay this year compared to last year?
Well, I mean, the main thing I felt, and I don't even know it's something that you can specifically point out, but just the way I felt about it was almost like our title winning season, where I felt like we were going to win the whole game. Whereas last season, we got back in that old Liverpool rut of waiting for something bad to happen. And we felt in control. Even when they got a couple of chances, you felt like Ali's going to come out and smother it like he did. We got our swagger back, and a lot of that has to do with having our players back. So I think we've got a good season to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the things that as I watch, I mean, having Van Dijk back there, I mean, his pass that he like sent before the second goal and throughout the game, I mean, you almost like every game, including like preseason, you can kind of see the different, like he's getting closer and closer to the Van Dijk we know. And even like when his speed and stuff is not up to par yet, or, like where it was before, like his passing brings so much, man, from the back. I mean, and I've always liked Matip. I still feel like he's like the second best center back on this team. And obviously Van Dijk makes him look even better. But at home, I still feel, even with everybody healthy, including like Gomez, I still would put them as like 1-2 in terms of our starter center backs. You're a center back by habits. You play center back yourself and play tough, rough defense, more rough than tough from what I hear.
Probably.
But who is your like number one and number two when it comes to center backs?
I think the same. I mean, I think Matip, he never lets us down. He looks awkward. Even when he looks like he's going to get beat, he gets in there. He dribbles better than half the forwards in the league, even though he looks like he's about to fall down every time. So I don't think anybody's beaten his to that spot yet. We don't know what Konate is going to look like yet. He's definitely looks physically impressive, but I don't think Matip should get put on the bench until somebody proves they belong there. And with Virgil, I mean, I think even if the guy was crap at defending, his presence and his long balls would still make him one of the best center backs in the league.
Yeah, I mean, man, that's seeing that defensive line back. I mean, kind of like Ryan is saying, it's good to have center backs, not midfielders playing center backs or dudes off the streets trying to fill in and stuff like that. It makes a huge difference. One thing that will get unnoticed, because he always kind of gets unnoticed, was I thought what Henderson brings, though, in terms of like how well he played. And I love like the way that he can kind of change the direction of the attack like very quickly, especially against a team like Burnley that's sitting back. Having him back in that midfield is huge. So here's the tricky question to you. In especially games like this where we play against teams, and we're going to get to Harvey as well and how well he played. But I would think Fab and Hendo have to be there in that midfield as a 1-2. Who would you put as your third, or are you not even doing that as a 1-2? I don't want to give my 1-2 and pass it on to you there, but
no, I think they're definitely the 1-2. Obviously, Hendo has had a few health problems over the years, so he might need a little more rest. Fab has generally been pretty healthy. So I think you can count on him. I think Hendo might get rotated a little more, but I think first choice, if we're playing a game that's a must win, I think you got to start with those two. And then I guess it depends on tactics. Harvey, is obviously a lot more attacking, whereas Thiago is going to sit a little further back and dictate play. But I think it's great to have options. We've got options at center back. Finally, we've got options at midfield. This is what we missed last year, why we felt so much like we were chasing things. One thing I wanted to start with, as we mentioned, Fabinho, we had a great, our team had a big loss this week, and we should have a moment of silence. And that's Ben Davies left the team, and I think It's really tough for a lot of us to take. We've all grown pretty attached to what he does for a club, and I think we really should recognize that.
He will be missed because I mean, at least he's probably the most talked about player that we never saw in terms of that. Because we did definitely talk about him a lot, but we didn't really get to see him much. So before we talk more about the game, let's go to your neck of the woods where while you're chilling at home, people are at the bar in the crack of dawn over there. So let's go to Gally, who is actually at your guys. What is the pub's name?
It's Finn McCool's pub in New Orleans.
So we're going there with Gally, and Gally is with a couple of your guys over there, and we'll kind of like get their take on the game as well as some more information about your supporter club as well. And I want to ask you some questions because you guys are like one of the newest ones too. So
yep, awesome.
Gally, what's going on?
What's happening, guys? How are you guys doing?
Hey, man.
We're doing
what a great
man because it was good to wake up. So I'm just going to pass it over to you so you can talk to the guys over there and give us kind of like a feel of the pub. We're only getting a feel of Rich's room over there. So you give us some taste of New Orleans from there.
My captors gave me 15 minutes to be able to talk to y'all. So
First off, I want to thank Rich. Thank you for helping me get connected with these great guys. Thank the Liverpool Supporters Club in New Orleans for this amazing scarf, and really excited. This was an amazing morning. Sorry you weren't here, Rich. You missed it. Great crowd, lots of fun. So we're gonna get it. We are at Finn McCool's right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. It is absolutely amazing. Great supporters club. I am sitting with Todd and Joel, two of the officers of the club, along with Rich, and we're just going to ask them some questions. We're going to start here with exactly how this club became and when they became an official Liverpool supporters, and we're going to get ourselves sent over right now, if I can turn this camera properly, and we're going to start and talk with Joel.
What's up, guys?
We do here, Joel. Joel, how we doing?
Outstanding. Every day the Reds win, it's a good day. So
it is a good day, Joel. So talk to me a little bit about how this club came to be.
Well, we've probably had a good gathering here for about a decade. Maybe actually a little bit before 2010 probably is when I started showing up, and we've had regulars coming in and going from then. There's a patriarch. His name is Sal Canatella, and he's no longer here. He's in Alabama, but he's the one that spearheaded the club, the organization. He got in touch with the club in Liverpool, and it took us a couple of years. I think we've been organized now for 2 years. Before COVID, we obviously had a lot bigger group that would show up weekly, but as it stands, I think we probably had 30 people here this morning, which was an excellent turnout. I'm very happy with the people that showed up, and with all the restrictions, it was very, very good today. Sal set it up a couple of years ago, and we got people registered, and it's we've had a good crew, but it's always nice to have it organized. It's nice to be associated with the club. They've been fantastic. They support us, and anything we ask for, I'm very happy to be officially associated with the club.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I appreciate you sharing that information with us. Once again, just a reminder, we're at Finn McCool's. If you get down here to Louisiana, you got to make sure and check out a match here. More importantly, check out the interactive map on the AmericanScouser.com website, because that's how you can find these amazing clubs and meet people like Joel and Todd, who we're going to roll to now. So, Todd, I want you to give me your man of the match and overall take here today on the match against Burnley.
I can't believe that I'm saying this, actually, but for me, the man of the match was Costas.
Okay.
I say I can't believe I'm saying this because last year, when he had to step in here and there, was unimpressed with his performance, but I think that he had a good preseason, and the last 2 matches without Robbo, I think he's proven that he is a very quality backup. Let's be honest, he is going to be a backup. Robbo is the greatest left back in the world. And I just think that his delivery into the box, his corners, actually think his corners might be better than Robbo's. I know that could be sacrilege to say this, but I think it's better. So for me, he's the man of the match. Overall, I think we played well. We're coming back together. The players that were out for most of last year obviously are getting back on their feet. Virgil, Matip, literally getting back on their feet. So I think towards the end, the defense was a little shaky. And obviously Trent seemed to take a little knock at the end, which is concerning. But I think overall, Klopp has done a good job playing some of the guys who are squad players and giving them some minutes and stretching their legs. And next week at Chelsea, or against Chelsea at home, we will have our first, what I think, real test of the season. And I think that giving these younger guys some minutes and letting them show what they can do is going to be good for us this season. So overall, I think the last 2 weeks have been great. And Burnley's always a tough opponent, and they played fiercely and flagrantly today, but we withstood and won.
So we're going to pull this back in. No one needs to see me for much of this. We want the stars. But I did want to say this here, because it brought me to my next question, which I wanted to ask the guys. That match today seemed a little disgusting. I thought at one point we were watching a rugby match and the way Burnley was playing. And I'll tell you this right now. I thoroughly expect an enjoyable post-match presser, because the gaffer never hesitates to share his opinion on Burnley or that of the disgusting nature of Sean Dyche, which basically is like a dark arts. I think the guy was a professor on Harry Potter, because he can create ways to do things on a pitch that makes you forget you're watching football unless you're sitting in the center of New Orleans thinking about the game on Monday night. Because there were a couple times there, I thought there were tackles in that match that were better than the tackles I see my New York Giants, take on in the pro NFL league here in America.
What is the Giants?
There's no reason to put any time into American football when we have such a beautiful game to talk about today. So I'm going to come back here to Joel, and I want Joel's take on exactly where he sees the lineup going now that guys are coming back and getting more healthy leading up to that Chelsea match, because I think it's going to be really interesting to see who gets the starts, because especially after that performance by Harvey Elliott today. So, Joel, what do you think about the lineup moving forward, and what do you expect in the Chelsea match next weekend?
Well, I think you saw a couple of guys today who may not be in the lineup next week. I think, Timucin, he's been outstanding the first 2 weeks. I was pleasantly surprised with his performance. I think Todd was right. He showed up today and he did a great job. It looks like Robertson's back training, so if Robertson's healthy and ready to go, I think you'll probably see him in the lineup for Chelsea next week. Another one, Harvey Elliott, he got his first full start in the Premier League. He played the entire match. I was kind of surprised that he didn't get pulled off at some point, but look, I think he played pretty well overall. He gave the ball away a couple of times, but he played a great ball to Salah. It was just offside and scored the goal. I think he looks like he's a player that we can count on through the season, and so I'm excited for him. I don't think he'll start against Chelsea next week. I think you'll probably see Thiago. He came on late in the match, and I think once he gets fitness up, he's going to be a nailed-on starter in the midfield. Obviously, Fabinho is out this week because of his father passing away, and we all send our feelings out to him. And sorry about that. And I think that if he's ready to play next week, he's also a nailed-on starter. So I think the midfield is going to look real different next week. If you can give me Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson in the midfield, I'm not sure there's a better three in the world right now than those three. The question is, Jota, he scores when he plays. I don't know. It feels like he goes large stretches in the game without touching the ball. And do you continue to play him because he's scoring, or do you put Bobby back in the starting lineup? And for me, I would like to see Jota continue to start. And it's nothing against Bobby. I know he had a bad year last year, but he's also looked pretty good when he comes on. But if you got Mane, Salah, and Jota up there. I just think that those three can all score at any moment of the game. And so if you have that midfield and those three in front, Chelsea can spend all the money they want. We can play with them no matter what. So that's the lineup I like to see next week.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And lastly, Todd, I'm going to ask you, I do agree, actually, with everything that Joel just shared. I do think that will be our starting midfield in big matches. I also think it'll be our starting midfield in our first big match, which is next week. That said, I think we are owed to give a little ode right now to Naby Keita and the two matches he just put back-to-back, because they might have been the most impressive consecutive appearances he's had for the club. And I found that hug from Klopp as fitting as anything you would see at the end of that match. It almost was a hug to replace the feeling of getting yanked in Madrid during the Champions League last year in the first half. So, Ted, what do you feel about Naby's performance today so far, and how great is it to have a world-class or on the way to being class midfielder to back up the best midfield three in the world?
I think that hug from Klopp was telling more than anything. When I saw it happen, I thought, Klopp does dish out the hugs very liberally. He loves to give a hug, but sometimes his hug says more than just the hug. And I think that he was saying, Naby, you look great today, lad. And it was wonderful. I think that our new signing, Naby, if he stays fit, stays healthy, can become the world-class player that we signed. These first two matches and the preseason showed that he is the player that we bought. And I don't know what it is that makes him continue to get hurt season after season, but I'm hoping that this year that it will be the year where nothing gives out. Maybe his time in the gym, maybe the practices will, sorry about that, that it will, make him a great backup. And because we do, Joel's right, we have probably the greatest midfield in the world, kind of like we did back in the days of Mascherano, Alonso, and Gerrard. We're back with the greatest midfield in the world, and he's going to have to fight hard to be a backup in the greatest midfield in the world. But the good news for us as supporters of this club is that if somebody needs a break, we need a rest, to know that Naby can come in and we won't skip a beat, that he will be part of the greatest midfield in the world at that point in time. I think it's wonderful.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. So we're going to wrap up with this, everyone. I want to thank the official Liverpool Supporters Club for welcoming me, my wife, and my friends into their family today, their community. It was a wonderful opportunity to find my way into an area of New Orleans at 6:30 in the morning. We will be back next week, hoping to do one of these live from the official Liverpool Supporters Club in Rhode Island. For anyone listening right now, if you can make it there, hope to see you. And last and not least, if you're watching this, checking the video, check out our website. Make sure to check out the Liverpool officials and unofficial supporters club map that we have. It will give you all the places to find other Reds who love the club just like you. Hopefully you'll meet some great friends like Todd and Joel and all the people that I met today. For AmericanScouser.com, reporting live, this is Gally in New Orleans.
Thanks a lot, Gally. Don't party too hard over there.
Hey, I got to get home on Monday. I'm bringing a freaking hurricane with me, so I'm going to come for the fight. Everybody, be good. Love the matches. Have a great day.
All right,
Thank
man.
you.
Thanks.
You guys have quite the group over there, it looks like, Rich. I mean, was that you guys are one of the newest ones, and obviously, like, it was right before COVID, right? You guys got it?
Yeah, well, what started out is perfect timing to start an OLSC because we were about to win our first league title in 30 years. turned into the worst time to start an OLSC because all the pubs got shut down, and when they did reopen, there were restrictions and caps on how many people could be in, and people just not wanting to come out in the first place because of risk of getting a disease. So it hasn't been the greatest time to grow a club, but we do have a good base for support. And as Joel mentioned, we get pretty good turnout pre-COVID. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there this morning, but if they got 30 out this morning during COVID for a 6:30 a.m. match, that's not too bad either.
I was going to say that is actually pretty impressive because, I mean, these early games have to be the biggest challenge. Once again, I can just hear people in like the West Coast cussing us out as we talk about this, but I mean, it has to make it a big challenge. I mean, heck, I know most of the people that I talk to are just going right back to bed after the game. If you weren't on with us, you would probably hit that too. But once I'm up, I'm up.
I'll be sleeping as soon as the laptop closes.
Well, let me ask you a couple of things that the guys talked about over there. One of them was, let's start with Keita. What do you make of his play so far? I'm personally always like very careful until I see an extended period of time with, regular, decent, above average performances by him. What did you make of him? I noticed at halftime, Tim Howard was criticizing him in terms of like not connecting with passes. And I think that's because sometimes he tries those through passes that the other players will not. And that's kind of his role. But, expecting Tim Howard to understand soccer is a whole thing by itself. But what do you make of his play?
I have to admit, I'm a Keita fanboy. When we signed him and he still had the year left in Germany, I watched a lot of his games because I wanted to see what we were getting. And I thought, this guy's going to be perfect for the way Klopp wants to play. Unfortunately, he's had a lot of false starts because of injury. But every season, I think this is the season he's going to break out. I think Joel talked about our preferred midfield with Fabinho, Thiago, and Hendo, and that's probably it right now. But I think if Keita can stay healthy, I can see him displacing somebody. He just has a different ability that none of the others have, and I think you're 100% right. He's going to miss on some passes because he's going to take some chances that others won't take, and especially against a team that's going to sit back. We've got to unlock. He could be really valuable. I mean, we've all suffered through years of teams sitting back and us just passing it from the right flank to the left flank and back and nothing penetrating. I think a fit Naby Keita can unlock that.
So, like the guys, you kind of put Thiago, ahead of him. What aspect do you pick? When you look at those two, because they are very similar in some ways. Obviously, Thiago's, resume is a lot more impressive too, and his experience. But what makes you pick Thiago over Keita when you're kind of like in between two? Because I feel like we talked earlier, 1 and 2 is automatically going to like Fab and Hendo.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is down to his resume, Thiago's resume. I mean, he's done it. He's done it at the biggest team in Spain, done it at the biggest team in Germany, and now he's at the biggest team in England. He's won everything there is to win in those other countries. He's got incredible ability, and I think we didn't get to see the best of him last season with all the shuffling around and asking him to play a role that's really not his preferred role. So I think, hopefully we'll see the true Thiago that we were expecting to see this season as well. And, it's just such a difference from last year where we were struggling to find 11 fit players to now we've got to decide who's going to be our best center backs, who's going to be our best left back, who's going to be our best midfielders, who's going to start up front. This is where a team like Liverpool should be. And, without the worst luck imaginable like we had last season, it's where we will be. And I think, there's always lots of noise about who's signing who and what our club is not doing. But when we're having conversations about really top tier players that don't have a spot in our starting 11, who are we signing and where are we putting them?
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I do feel like still there are some players that, we probably do not see in the picture that are on the squad, maybe replacing them with, more potential like players with more potential, I should say, or future would be a good move. But in terms of necessity, I don't know if it's exactly a necessity, unless, we have like those injuries and stuff again. You talked about, I mean, these are like good problems to have when you're trying to, like you said, pick who should play as opposed to, barely picking a lineup, kind of like what we were doing last year. I mean, I remember like doing the podcast, and it was not a lot of conversation of who should start, because it was kind of like, who can start. It was more the question than who should. So you talked about the attacking line. So that's becomes like the second one, I think, between Diogo and Bobby. And, I know where you stand with Bobby. We both love what he brings. It's totally different what Diogo brings. And I thought against, for example, Burnley, he was probably the better pick, just because he physically fights a lot more. I feel like he wears down defenses with his physicality, as opposed to Bobby, who kind of does it more with his movements and, like with the runs he makes and the space he creates. Against a team like Chelsea, for example, do you pick Bobby because of those qualities, or do you stick with Jota because of his finishing and obviously his physicality?
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Bobby against Chelsea. Jota is really clever, and he makes runs, which I think against a team like Burnley that's sitting back, exactly how he scored his goal. I mean, the defender thinks he's got him marked, and he takes a quick run in front of him at the right time and gets a goal. I think against a team like that, that was a good fit. I think against a team like Chelsea, who have more experienced, more cultured players instead of a bunch of brutes. I think Bobby's cleverness and game intelligence is a bigger deal. Clearly, I think Jota's going to have a part to play in the game, whether it's coming in for Bobby or one of the other two, whoever looks like they need it the most. But for me, it's Bobby, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like against that defense, Bobby could be a better pick, and he didn't get a lot of minutes today, so he will definitely be more rested. I mean, this happens every game against Burnley because, I mean, this is their brand of football, if you want to call it that. Gally was talking about Giants tackling as a New Orleans Saints guy. You were not very impressed with that, I noticed.
No, they aren't so great at that for the past several years, I don't think. But based on what's probably coming up for our season, I probably shouldn't criticize any other American football teams.
I know I was kind of set you up for that, but you didn't fall for that. Good move by you. So
I've got a bag on standby.
So let me ask you about that in a way, in terms of like Burnley. I mean, anybody who listens to the podcast knows I just despise Sean Douche and like the Burnley football. What do you make of that? Because I know we talked before, and I know we both still try to play, remember the glory days. And I know from what you told me, you like to play Burnley football style. So do you appreciate that more as somebody who kind of plays like that?
Well, I would like to think when I was younger, I like to play the rough style like Burnley, but had some skill as well. Burnley's more about rough, and that's the whole strategy. I like to, shoulders challenge somebody and then hit a nice long Virgil pass, so you can get the best of both worlds. And it's been so long since I've been any good, it's hard to remember if I ever actually could do any of that, but I like to imagine that I could.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, it reminds me of kind of like football in England, maybe like almost like 2-3 decades ago. Before, that's when, the more skilled players and quality players and more expensive players were going to the Italian league at the time, before that kind of like collapsed hard. And then, the Premier League started to attract that talent and the quality of the game improved. And you kind of see like, but just by how those teams do, like in like the European Championships. And so Linger comments and wants to be invited on one of these. I honestly thought Linger would be going back to sleep right now, but she's not home, I don't think, on the West Coast.
Once Mane scored a goal, she probably can't sleep for weeks.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we gotta bring my Linger on here too. Maybe we'll do like a Mane special. I just like I'll just leave the laptop, walk away, come back a few hours later, and see if she's still talking about Mane. How about that, by the way? How about the two up front, Mane and Salah's play? I noticed Salah's really trying hard to get him a goal, and he almost did again today. But that crap will not get noticed now. It will only get noticed in a game where we couldn't score, and one of them. That's the thing. People still lift their hands. I mean, we've done it. You're here. Why ain't you passing
Right.
stuff? That stuff, becomes a huge thing if we draw and they can't score. But now, while we're winning, nobody pays attention to that. I almost feel like the front three is those two are trying to connect almost more than before.
Yeah, I mean, I was pulling for Salah to get a goal. I was my captain this week, and no goals and no assists didn't really help my team much. But I'll take a Liverpool win over a fantasy league win every day. One of the other reasons I like Bobby in there, I think, is when you've got Sadio, Mo, and Jota all in there together, they're all the guys that their first instinct is to try and take the shot themselves, which, is what you want from a guy that you want to score goals for you. Bobby is a little more of a connector and brings the others in, and I think creates some opportunities. Mane's reactions are always pretty obvious when he doesn't get the ball, and, I think that's normal. If any of us who have played, you get aggravated when you don't get the ball you should have, but it's not some big issue that, Twitter needs to analyze for the next week about whether there's a falling out and it's going to be a problem in the team. That's just normal, soccer reactions.
So let me ask you this: the guys and I guess Premier League picked Costas for player of the game. I was in my head going in between a few different players. Who is your player of the match?
I think Costas for me comes just slightly under Harvey Elliott. I mean, Harvey Elliott wound up with not any goals or assists. He played a role in the second goal, obviously, but he just was in the middle of everything. Every time he got the ball, he looked dangerous. And, putting all that into context, that's his first Premier League start. First time playing in front of a full Anfield in a Premier League game for a young kid. I mean, the guy's really going to be a player. He's got such great game intelligence and such great instincts. He makes smart decisions. He's got the confidence. Everybody playing in the Premier League has great skill. I think the difference is instincts and confidence. And he's just, stands out, especially for somebody his age and his experience. He's, it's going to be tough for him to find minutes in the midfield, as we've talked about the players we have there. But I think he's got to have a place for us this season. He really looks like he's developing, and as a lifelong Liverpool fan, he's going to be another one that the fans love.
I think it's almost odd to see a kid like him have so much confidence on the ball. It's not like he was playing it safe. He was constantly trying to create, be dangerous, and it looked like anytime he got the ball, I don't know, because we want him to succeed too. Anytime he gets the ball, it's what is he gonna do? And you're kind of watching it, but he was creating stuff anytime he got the ball as well. And then comparing that to for example, last week we saw with the Ox where it almost looks, compared to preseason especially, more hesitant, if you will. Do you feel like it's that the pressure obviously on a player, like a young player, is sky is the limit, expectations are low, everything you do is positive, compared to a player like Ox is trying to live up to something and establish a spot? I mean, is it just something that's in their minds, or is there more to it?
Well, I think there's definitely a different type of pressure for Ox than there is for Elliott. I mean, Elliott, it's all using New Orleans word, it's all lagniappe right now for him. He's young. He's just kind of getting started. Any minutes he gets, any influence he has, is it's all great. And a lot of it maybe is unexpected. Ox is at the other end of his career where he really knows every time he gets on, he needs to make an impact, or he's likely to see less and less minutes with the players he's in competition with. So clearly that's got to weigh on him. Personally, I think Harvey's just got a quicker football brain too. More than most people. I mean, you just see the decisions he makes and how quickly he makes them. It's just, I think that's a key difference. And, physical ability of Ox, he's a big, strong, fast guy. He's got a great long shot. But you're playing against teams that are moving lightning quick too. And, opportunities disappear pretty quick if you don't take them right away.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Earlier you mentioned about captaining like Mo Salah, by the way. Jamie, he's one of our fantasy football guys, kind of like Gally. I'm only into fantasy football the first 5 weeks. Paul likes to call me the Everton of fantasy football. I'm good the first 4 or 5 weeks, and I just fall off once
the
September
fantasy football power shift this season.
So this week, 2,776,183 fantasy league bosses have captained Mohamed Salah for this game week, which I guess is a record for a player to be captained in 1 week. And oddly, I have him as a captain as well. And this is why you do not follow my lead in fantasy if you want to win anything. So let's just briefly look ahead to next week. We kind of talked about the lineup and who we would prefer. In terms of a challenge for the title, do you see Chelsea as a bigger threat perhaps than City, or do you still go City, Chelsea, or do you put United in the mix at all?
I think it's got to be City, Chelsea. I think United's going to have a much better season than than they've had recently. They've had some good signings, and a couple of players who I won't name are pretty top tier players for them. But I think they're still maybe a season or two away, or a player or two away from challenging, and hopefully things fall apart before that happens. But I think, I think Chelsea's made some great signs. I think Lukaku is going to be huge for them. And they've got a couple other young players like Havertz, who didn't really hit the ground running last season, but he's got a lot of talent. I think defense is still where they're suspect. Thiago Silva is obviously a world-class player, but he's also on his last legs. And Premier League's pretty fast league. So that's going to be their weakness. I find it quite hilarious to see pundits talking about City can only challenge if they go spend 150 million on Kane. You've got the most expensive football team in history, and you're saying you can't challenge unless you go buy somebody else. It is interesting that that Gabriel Jesus is the backup striker to no starting striker. But I guess that's the role he's happy with.
Yeah, I another player I despise, if you listen to the podcast regularly, right behind Neymar. He's on the top of my list. With
that whiny face he has.
Yes, thank you. So I'm not the only one. He looks like he's trying at all times. By the way, talking about having a look, I don't know why does Costas always looks like he stayed up late last night to finish a paper for school or something.
I think that's the only reason he got man of the match, because everybody who woke up, in America that voted was so tired we all could relate to him. Like he's just as tired as us, and yet he's still having a great game. You got to love it.
Yeah, I thought he played well. I'll be honest. Like, and obviously he had the assist and everything too. But as I was watching, I was more going in between. I know, because I'm a Handel fanboy, maybe because I, spent the last 2-3 years fighting his haters. Because I thought he did really well silently. Most people won't notice, but he did a lot of midfield. And Van Dijk, I think, it's one of those where it could be defaults, I guess. We can go back to the default setting and, naming him man of the match all the time. But it's just, Harvey is a good pick, I have to admit. I thought he did really well. He's not physically very strong, but kind of like what Scott was saying earlier, he's like agility and constant movements and effort, man. I mean, that dude was still doing full pressure in the 93rd minute, going at their right back. And you just got to admire that from a young kid. He knows he has to give it all, and he really did.
Well, he's not too dissimilar from David Silva, who had a pretty good career as a pretty tiny guy in the Premier League. Creativity and intelligence made up for his lack of size and strength. And if that's who we're comparing him to, there could be worse people.
I'll take that. Yes, if he ends up being that, and kind of like what Scott is saying, I mean, we do have some really good young talent, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of, I mean, we have like 10 days left here in the transfer window. I don't know who we want added. I mean, do you see anything happening? I know there's a lot of talk about like Shaq being sold and stuff like that. Almost sold, I should say, like terms agreed and stuff like that. But do you see anything happening in the next 10 days? I feel like this squad, barring like some disastrous injuries again, is deep enough to keep going, except maybe can use a winger, because I just don't see Shaq or Divock coming in to do anything extra to this offense.
Yeah, I think that's the place that we could spend some money. And like you mentioned earlier, we're not going to be getting Mbappe or Haaland this window.
God damn it, Rich! Don't be breaking hopes and stuff.
I learned that on a stadium tour. It's very reliable information. But I think Origi's a legend. He's had some of our best moments for us, but he's clearly not up to it. He doesn't even look like he's bothered to try and be up to it, honestly. Shaq looks like he's out the door. Elliott's there. It looks like Klopp's going to use him more in midfield, so it's hard to say if he's going to be up top. Minamino, who looked really, really lightweight and timid last season, looked fantastic in preseason.
Yeah.
So maybe he's a potential, but I think it'd be great to get some potential winger that can step in where hopefully Origi and Shaq are departing. I think there was talk about one of the guys who did well in the Euros. I can't remember his name right now. I think he was a Belgian guy.
Daka. Okay.
He looked like he had potential. I think the numbers I saw on him weren't anything outrageous. So maybe that's something that could happen. But I don't know. I think that's really our only place that I would like see us signing. I know we lost Wijnaldum, and a lot of people talked about replacing him. But we talked already a lot about our midfield options. I don't see, who you're going to bring in that's going to make a big difference there. So I'd like to see some more potential come in. I don't know how likely that is. I'm personally satisfied with the team we have if we don't bring anybody else in. The only thing that gives me a little bit of heartburn is, the African Nations Cup is coming and we lose 2/3 of our starting front three for probably a long time, because good chance both of those teams will progress. So that gives me a little bit of worry. If we're relying on Origi, we could get legendary Origi who steps up when we're not expecting it, or we can get the Origi we've had for the past 2.5 years that just kind of walks through the game.
Yeah, I know they were talking about it during the broadcast, and they were like, "Oh, it's only a few games," but I feel like in a league that I feel is going to be really tight up top, losing points, even if it's a few games, back-to-back games where you lose points, it could, derail your title run. So I think it is a big deal. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sleep easy knowing, Divock will fill just right in. Don't worry about it kind of thing. I just don't see that happening. And that's why, if anything, I would like to see an improvement made there. But I don't know anybody who is going to give us that feeling where we're going to go to bed and saying, I can't wait to get this guy coming in, do some miracles.
Right. Whoever we get is going to be somebody that's going to be probably behind, Mane, Salah, Firmino, and Jota. So whoever we bring in is not going to be, world beater type that, everybody can't wait to see. It's going to be a project player probably. So, regardless.
That's because you crushed the hopes of getting Mbappe.
Yeah, well, when you have inside information, you have to share it. Responsible steward of information for the club.
Which we always appreciate. Okay. Well, Rich, thank you for joining me in this post-match. We're here every week. Different guests. I guess we'll have to bring Linger on as well. So hopefully, and then we'll have our correspondent out there in Rhode Island reporting live. He's going to grow into that role. Rich, thanks again. And hopefully you'll join us again after another win.
See you soon.
Thanks, everybody, and see you guys next week.